Hello everyone, welcome to this week's lesson. Now today I'm going to continue on in our series of lessons that are focusing on the book The Four Agreements. It's just to see if it has any practical applications for us that will help improve our spiritual understanding and improve our lives as well. So this week's lesson is titled, Don't Take Anything Personally, Part 2. And then the subtitle could be, Why Do We Take Things Personally in the First Place? Our scripture today is going to be from Luke 6, 41 and 42. Those are the verses, and they read, Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, Friend, let me take that speck out of your eye, when you yourself don't see the log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. Second scripture today is Colossians 3:13. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. Now, going on to our wisdom quote, I'm using ones that I had started with, and I've added a couple here today. But this is a really important one because it again goes back to what this is all about. It's about learning to live from your center, from that place of spirit that is within you. Paul J. Alessi writes, There are two sides to every story, and the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. Now, this is by Anonymous. When someone tries to trigger you by insulting you or by doing or saying something that irritates you, take a deep breath, switch off your ego. Remember that if you are easily offended, you are easily manipulated. And last, from Miguel Ruiz writes, Nothing another person does is because of you. It is because of themselves. All people live in their own dream, and in their own mind, they are in a completely different world from the one that you live in. When you take something personally, you make the assumption that they know what is in your world, and you try to impose your world on their world. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you remember the four agreements, but just in case, I'm going to give you just a quick refresher. Number one, be impeccable with your words. Today we are doing Do Not Take Anything Personally, Part 2. Then don't make assumptions. And lastly, always do your best. Now, last week I began speaking about the second agreement, Don't Take Anything Personally, and how it gives us a kind of immunity to the words and actions of others. Now, during that lesson, we explored several viewpoints in regard to this agreement. As with anything, we must remain mindful that we mostly see life from a relative point of view. The relative world of thoughts and emotions that shift in many directions according to how we may be feeling in the present moment. This happens every moment of every day, whether you realize it or not. And the second agreement, well, that states that don't take anything personally. Whatever happens around you, don't take it personally. Now, this week's focus brings us back to ask the question, why do we take these things so personally? And some say we take things personally because we are in a so-called trap of personal importance. Think about that. Think about what I just said. Let me repeat it. We take things personally because we are in a so-called trap of personal importance. So what does that tell you? Another possible reason we may be taking things personally is when we were children. We got used to being judged, and in turn we learned it was somehow right for us to do the same, even though Jesus taught the opposite. One day, by no fault of our own, other than not being aware, many of us were taught not to question authority. We believed without question what our parents, teachers, friends said, and took what they said as an absolute truth without any investigation whatsoever. But in time, we may come to realize that most of what we were taught was somebody's opinion, or it was their relative truth. Teaching our children our fears and personal beliefs has been going on since man first walked the earth. Humanity passes on what it fears, and where we are to place our faith with the intention of protecting our offspring. Now, from a book titled Tales of the South Pacific by James Michener, Richard Rogers and Oscar Hammerstein II created a musical with the help of Josh Logan called South Pacific. Now, the show debuted on Broadway in 1949, and in the musical there is a song which speaks volumes to this point. The title is You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. You see, the song suggests that hatred and intolerance are taught. Most people think this is intentional, but I believe what we mostly teach is not deliberate. Many times, what we say and teach is only what we were taught or heard without investigating whether or not it was valid or still applicable, let alone being unaware of the broader scope of how our words and beliefs affect others. So it is important to come to understand that what you and I were taught growing up was mostly given in good faith. What our parents, friends, and role models taught was thought to protect us for our own good, much of which may still hold true. But sometimes we need to investigate our current beliefs to see if they are helpful or not. The reality is our friends, families, teachers, ministers, and mentors most likely shared their own fears and biases, and when we embody them, then we embody them as our own. Many unknowingly taught to judge others by a variety of social measures. There's color, social status, where someone may live, religion, ethnicity, and whether or not they are, quote unquote, worthy of our time and effort. Remember, our family and our friends were unknowingly taught to fear and have biases as well. Sadly, we were taught to classify anyone who did not look like us or act like us. We thought that they act like we thought they should, and we make them an enemy. Now, in my research, I have found that seldom is a deliberate evil intention like motivating conspiracy theorists would want you to believe. It is important to understand that, for the most part, people were just teaching what they were told and came to believe. Now, this goes on all the time, even today. Now, some have claimed it is being done on purpose, with a deliberate attempt to harm. That may be so in some small cases, but not always. For instance, it was once taught and thought that the world was flat. There are still those, who argue the point, even if they have seen evidence that the world is round and that science has verified that fact. The world being flat was taught for years and years and years. And what we don't realize is that it was created by a fear that somehow we would fall off the edge of the world if we ventured too far away from land. This still goes on today. Now, I remember growing up, people saying, don't go here, oh, don't go there, in order, in their own minds, to keep us safe and secure. But I have a question. If we did not venture out into the world, we would still be living in caves, wouldn't we? I believe that it was Joseph Campbell who told the story of a man who ventures out from his tribe in search of life. In time, he returns with tales of what he had seen. His fellow tribe members did not believe him and thought he was, a bit off. But the truth is that he wasn't. He had a different view because he had gone out to explore the world. Now here is another example. You see, I was born in Wabash, Indiana. It was the first electrically lighted city in the world. Now, what people might not know is that there was a group of very well-meaning but very fearful Christians who believed that electricity was the devil's tool. They created a litany of reasons not to use it. They used their words and influence in their attempt to stop its use. But in time, humanity discovered that that was not so. The only evil that came out of the use of electricity is created within the mind of man, not in the electricity itself. You can misuse anything. Just think about that for a moment. Now, another reason why we might take things personally is many crave recognition by being honored for their athletic or maybe their creative abilities. And if they did not receive what they thought they needed, their sense of self-worth dropped. For most of us, the net result of all of this competition created an ingrained sense of anxiety, including the belief that we weren't able or lovable or even good enough. Sometimes we even got punished for it. And today, we may punish ourselves if we do not get the approval we want. Thus, beginning in our childhood, we have carried others' words, thoughts, and judgments, and their opinions into our own personal adulthood. And we have adopted those beliefs as our own, even if they're not true. You see, those thoughts most likely become your core beliefs. And as you continue your journey into life, you may find many of these beliefs very limiting and sometimes unhealthy or not true at all. You will continue to be limited unless you change your core belief and discover that there is another way in which you can live. Now, if you never question the validity of what another said, their words may have cast a spell on you. Words like, you're fat. If you heard that as growing up, you very easily will always see yourself as fat. You're too noisy. Children should be seen, but not heard. You're terrible at math. You are better than they are. You have a family name that needs to be upheld. You'll never make it. You're a bad boy, or you're a bad girl, or you are a loser, or whatever. But did it ever dawn on you that what they were saying may be a belief that was passed down through the generations of judgments and have no validity at all concerning you? If you begin to believe you need outside approval to make you okay, you are more inclined to find yourself dependent on others' praise to reassure your own worthiness. This places you on an emotional roller coaster and places you even more at risk of seeing yourself as a victim. Looking for validation and acceptance from another outside source will always leave you unfulfilled in the long run. Now, as human beings, we are pretty much unaware and unawakened to the majority of things that are going on around us, especially when it comes to what people say and do. For the most part, I believe that people do not say things with an intention to hurt or harm. They were either reacting from their own issues, their own emotions, or trying to teach or protect you from what they might have gone through. And what they spoke was what they knew at the time. So there is very little reason why to take anything personally. Now I want to talk now about the importance of understanding the truth about the evolution of consciousness. And this really applies for us in our day today. It is important to remember that as we go through life, our consciousness evolves. What you believed back in the day may not be true at all for you today. This is what I call the evolution of human consciousness. And if you find that to be so for you, the same is also true about others. Now, when you find you have taken something personally, I go back to always thinking about what Louise Hay taught, that there may be another way to see this. And a new thought and a viewpoint will help you to move beyond the mental and the emotional hook that you may be hooked on. She says this: it's important to remember, for the most part, people are doing the best they can, coming from where they came from and knowing what they knew at the time. This is also true of you. Now, Jesus knew that if we held on to thoughts of anger or judgment toward others, whether it be good or bad, it would impede us from awakening to our oneness in God. His remedy, it was, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And I like to add to that, and neither do I. Let's move on, God. So, if we continue to give power to other people's opinions, you see, that's kind of setting ourselves up to living in a world of emotional response. If we do not take our power back, we will never get to know what is really true about ourselves, our world, and our own inherent Christ nature. 1 Corinthians 13, 9 through 12 reads, for we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Remember, everyone lives in their own world. To have an expectation that someone should embrace your world or you should embrace their world sets you up again and sets them up for disappointment, at least. Since having a strategy of self-protection is bound to fail, the alternative is to heal our old wounds, and by taking back the power we gave away. You may ask, how do we heal our old wounds? We do this by realizing that what others say and do has nothing to do with us, and that it never did. Now, how is that possible? Well, just take a look around. When you do, you will soon see that others are in their own world. They are living in cocoons, woven with their own beliefs and agreements. They don't see you as you really are. If they did, I bet they wouldn't speak and act the way they do. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. Most likely no other truer words have been spoken. You see, if others were in touch with their own inner essence and saw your inner essence, they would show you nothing but love and acceptance. For instance, one day someone thinks you're wonderful, and the next day you can't win for losing. The fact is, you haven't changed at all. You're still the same. What the other person says or does is just a projection, and you are the screen for the other person's movie. So why should you take it personally? Why should you just try to justify yourself? Why should you try to prove you're right and that they are wrong? The truth is the truth, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Doesn't change a thing about who you truly are. Now, the last reason why we may take things personally is something that will take some work to change. But the results of doing your inner work, it will free your mind, it will free your soul, and it will free you from all the emotional roller coasters that you have been experiencing. So here's the deal. When we respond to something, we see and claim it to be negative, there is something in us that may need to be looked at and may need to be healed. You don't respond to something unless there is something inside you to respond to. For instance, if you find yourself having a difficult time because you took something personal, you need to check to see what belief you hold that is being threatened so you can help heal it. We all have emotional hooks. There's no question about that. These emotional hooks are triggered by the words we hear, the intonation of a voice, and the way in which we choose to interpret them. Now, sometimes people think you don't have a choice the way you interpret them, but you do. Sometimes we call this getting our buttons pushed. Now, these emotional buttons are embedded in our consciousness. In truth, they are merely thoughts that in turn evoke our emotions. Some thoughts hurt us, some thoughts aid in healing us. So you can benefit by at least checking your thoughts that make you react in a certain way. We all have areas of sensitivity, that's for sure. And I am pretty sure that you probably know what they are, as well as everybody else. Granted, no one likes having their buttons pushed. Do you like having your buttons pushed? I know I don't. But I have learned that when my button is pushed, it is time for me to look within and to discover what the thoughts and beliefs that are causing my upset. Use these buttons instead of having them use you. It is important to realize that your buttons are your buttons. And if you do not go in and find out what those buttons are and release the beliefs causing them in the first place, you're going to continue to have your buttons pushed. Now, for instance, if you are reacting out of a fear, you need to find what those thoughts and beliefs are. You need to check the validity of your fears. Are they well-founded? Is what you are thinking true? And is it relevant today in this particular situation? You do this not to empower your fears, but rather you bring light to your fears to dispel the darkness so you can release them in order to heal your life, if found not relative to the situation. Until you make peace with what you fear, it will remain your issue, and you will continue to react out of fear. Now, if you are reacting with anger, you can be sure that your ego is being challenged, your sense of right and wrong. You again need to discover what thoughts are being threatened and work through the emotions that they may cause. Ultimately, remember that you are responding to someone else's view of the world. Until you make peace with what makes you angry, it will remain your issue and continue to cause you hurt. Now, next week, we will take yet another look at the second agreement. This is a huge one. And I just want to make sure that we all have a really clear understanding as to the intricate intricacies of this particular agreement. So, your homework this week is to observe when you have one of your buttons been pushed. When that happens, I want you to stop right there. When you notice that a button has been pushed, stop right there. Then ask yourself, take a breath, then ask yourself, what is really going on within me? Why am I reacting this way? What thoughts are being challenged? What belief is being threatened? Now, I suggest that you might want to journal this and write down what you find. When you discover the root of your reaction, then ask yourself, is this the only way to see this? Is this something I want to continue to have happen in my life? This exercise, I tell you, will help you get back into the flow of living rather than just reacting to the world around you. And you won't have to take things personally. It will help you live from your center, the mental path of truth. Now, I want to take a moment now to just thank you for tuning in today and also watching our Facebook Lives on Sunday. And I'm just so grateful that we have these platforms to help us as we navigate through these uncertain times. I also want to say a very special thank you to all of you who continue to support this ministry. Your ongoing prayers and financial contributions are truly necessary to keep us operating. Now, if you care to contribute in a financial way, you can send your tithe or gift to our physical location. You can make your tithe out to Unity, and send it to 10417 South Orange Blossom Boulevard, Sebring, Florida 33875. That's Unity, 10417 South Orange Blossom Boulevard, Sebring, Florida 33875. Also, right below this video, we have made it possible for you to give online. Now, if you have a prayer request, simply call the office. Our number is 863-471-1122, and leave a message. Messages are checked daily, and you can be assured that your request will remain confidential. If you wish, you can also send your request and any comments or questions about this lesson via email. Our email address is, get your pencils out, unitysebring@gmail.com. That's unitysebring@gmail.com. You may also call Silent Unity at 1-800-669-7729 for a live one-on-one prayer. If you are on Facebook, you are invited to join me and Adam Abbott on Sunday morning around 10:30 a.m. on our Facebook page. There you can join us in a time of meditation and prayer. Now, if you have not yet liked our Facebook page, please do so now. The link to like us is just to the right of this video. Select the link and you will have access to us on your page. Now, on Sunday, if you're on your page, there will be a little box that comes up that you can push when we are online, when we come online. Or you can go to our page and watch from there. Now, our Board of Trustees has once again sought Spirit's guidance. And again, Spirit's directive is not just yet. Wait another week to reopen. Well, with that, the center will remain closed through at least August 16th. I want you to truly know that the board grapples with this every week. They spend countless hours in prayer asking for what is right. They take a look at what's going on around the world. They take that in and they ask Spirit, what are we supposed to do? And again, that guidance just keeps saying, not quite yet. You see, the intention of our board is to make sure that we take good care of our congregation. I personally ask each of you to pray for every soul who has contracted COVID-19 virus. See the light of God moving in and through them now. Take a deep breath. Call forth, just like Jesus did to Lazarus, call forth the life-giving force into these beautiful souls. See that energy of God's perfect healing power restoring them to wholeness. I also invite you to hold their families and friends and all of our frontline workers as well in your prayers. See them as having a revelation that God is within them as they soldier forth, knowing that they are loved and supported, and we are grateful for their contribution. I invite you now to see everyone taking every necessary precaution to remain healthy. See people realizing that wearing a mask is not a political thing. It is an act of compassion and an act of love. I hear so many people say, well, I'm not wearing this for me. I'm wearing it for you. And I'm thinking, why don't you also wear it for yourself? Anyway, let us be the ones who show the way by wearing a mask, by practicing social distancing. Wash your hands and hold the high watch, knowing that in time God will help us move through this together as one. And we can do that with ease and grace when we are open and receptive to the living Spirit of truth. This, my friend, is how you can be a channel of God's love into this world. So until we meet again, I affirm that you are whole and healthy. I affirm you and I continue to spread the love and the joy of the presence of the Christ that lives within us all. And we share that with every person, every being you think about and you meet. Peace, everyone. Bye for now.